This is Christopher Spera, and this is the iTechGear Weekly, episode number 98. The hot sign is clearly important. Recorded live Sunday, July 14th, 2024, live from iTechGear Central. As I said, I'm Christopher Spera, the editor-in-chief over here at iTechGear.org, and joining us today, oh my goodness, boy, do we have a lineup. We've got a lineup, don't you know?
We should be in a lineup.
Yeah, we should be in a lineup. The dulcet tones here. All right, the former contributing editor over at Gear Diary in Pocket Now, and of course, editor over here at iTechGear.org, Mr. Chris Gavula. How are you, sir?
Oh, we're doing.
We're lining up.
Or something, but glad to be here as always.
Good. Also joining us, the former contributing writer over at Gear Diary and currently the host of the Linux Link Tech Show and Living in the Retro Arcade podcast, and of course, editor here at iTechGear.org, Brother Joe McLaughlin. How are you, sir?
I'm doing fantastical. Did a shorter hike than I wanted to because, hey, we just had some storms roll through, but it's now no longer 90 degrees outside. And I'm happy about that.
That's always a big plus. I like it when it's no longer 90 degrees out. So,
yes.
So, and of course, last but never, ever least, former co-owner of WUGNET Publications and, of course, editor here at iTechGear.org, Dr. Mr. Larry McJunkin. How are you, sir?
Hot, as Joel mentioned.
Hot.
Yeah, I may have mentioned this.
We're talking hot.
Yeah, a few shows ago, but we're in the midst of the worst drought that Tennessee has actually ever seen.
Wow.
We've had like over a month of temps in the mid-90s. The grass is just dead looking, and there have been a couple of people actually expire from heat-related conditions.
Oh, wow.
Finally, this Wednesday, they say we're going to get rain, but then again, look who's predicting that. The people who are 50-50 and get paid for it. So
Yep.
Or, it's funny because up here, we've been getting rain every couple of days, like clockwork, and it's
give
cooler.
anything for it. It's awful.
Yeah, if you can't even get help from the hurricane for coming out the Gulf.
No, they swung the other way.
It came up here. We got it here.
You need to tell the people what that show title's about. They'll never get that one.
Oh, come on, man. The hot sign. Everybody knows the hot sign when it comes.
Well, no,
on.
you got to say the hot and now sign. Then they'll know.
Yes.
Hot now sign. Is that what it is?
Hot and now.
Hot
and
now.
now.
Now we're talking donuts. We were
having a Krispy Kreme and donut conversation during the pre-show. So,
and folks, this is what we do.
I mean,
we discussed the important stuff in the pre-show. That's all I'm saying.
Yep. A lot of high tech in those donuts.
Oh, well,
well,
I'm just saying, if you saw the baby bump over here, you'd know. There you go. Thank you. I'm here all week. You know what may not be here all week?
Yeah.
It may be the Vision Pro, because apparently sales for that little bad boy are what we like to call tanking. So what's going on with that, Chris?
Well, we just saw an interesting notice from IDC, who tends to track a lot of device sales and device trends and usages and things like that. And they made a report that they said that the sales are likely to fall 75% this quarter in the US for the Vision Pro. And, and it goes on to sort of speculate as to why that's happening. And their big speculation is that it's because it's priced too darn high. And I've said since day one, that's not the problem. The problem is there isn't a use case yet. There is no use case.
There's no killer app. And by that, you really truly mean killer app. Right?
And I really do, because really if you look at the history of tech, especially consumer tech in the last 10, 20, 30 years even, things that were considered way overpriced at the time sold and did well because there was some sort of killer something or other that somebody wanted. Right. If there's something somebody wants, they'll pay for it. They'll find a way to pay for it, even so. And that's not happening here because that thing doesn't exist. The thing this thing is best at right now is entertainment. And quite frankly, everybody says the same thing. The tech on this is amazing. It is one of the most amazing gadgets out there. It is phenomenal. It's great from a gadget, but that's great. Okay, what am I going to do with it? You know, and that's where
What,
everybody
why,
stalls.
what is the most compelling thing about this thing? It cannot be just the tech, right? I've got to be able to do
Right.
something
And
meaningful or
the spatial videos are
desirable
clever and
with that
good.
tech,
And the
right?
spatial videos and photos are clever and well done from what and the video and watching a movie on it is a great experience.
Mm-hmm.
Not an experience I'm going to pay $3,500 for, though. So
It's
that's the
not.
problem.
It's not.
And so and I will tell you that the interesting side effect of some of the things that they've done is you now can watch spatial videos that you create on your Apple device on your Meta Quest device. Meta has released a software update that lets you do some of that same stuff.
Well, there you
it's
go.
not a bad experience. The problem with the Meta Quest to me is that the resolution's still not what it should be. It still looks like you're looking through a screen door all the time when you're looking at them. But it's
You can
getting
see
there.
the
And
little squares. You can see the squares
yeah,
and the
yeah,
pixels,
you can see
right?
what's going on there. But the point is, they're leveraging what has been working within that Apple space. But again, that's not enough to drive the whole platform, right? So,
Yeah.
and they recognize that as well.
Well, speaking of driving that platform, the other way not to sell that thing is to get injected into the news that, hey, I'm Tim Cook. I use this every day.
I saw that.
I don't really give a damn
that's
how
just-
many days you use it.
But
like someone has said, go ahead.
Well, when pressed for how he uses it, his experience was mostly about media consumption. And when they asked him about productivity, his response was very bland and very vague and very not helpful.
No,
so it didn't,
as in I don't use it.
right.
As in I don't use it for that.
Yeah.
And so that says to me the same thing is the thing is out there. It's a great piece of kit, but
There's
so
no
what?
killer app.
And so,
there's no real draw to the device.
Again, this article was trying to make the thing that's, gee, if they would just lower the price, they'd sell them. I disagree with that. However, I will say there is always that possibility. If they lowered that price, it's possible that more developers might try to get involved, and they might come up with a killer app.
A thing,
but to me, at what price? I mean, if you lower the price on it, you're going to have to give something up. Something in that hardware isn't going to be as good. So where does that leave you? I don't know. I don't know.
Right. Is it the battery? Is it the resolution? Is it
right? So
the spatial capabilities? What is it?
Yeah, I don't know. So I don't know what that looks like. I guess is what I'm saying is I don't know that I'm going to get a device that I would care as much about. I don't think the Vision Pro is going away tomorrow. I don't. I think Apple will stick with it for a few years to try to make it happen. But it clearly isn't happening right now. And again, it's not for any fault of Apple as a hardware developer, but it sure is as far as you had to have a reason to do it, and the reason wasn't there. And without it,
I may not be the typical user, but I struggle with if someone gave me one of these things, what would I do with it? I have no idea.
Well, and I have some things that I use VR for today. And if it does those things, I would jump to this as opposed to what I've got if I was given one. But I wouldn't pay this extra money to have it right now. Is what I'm getting at.
I would probably put it on if I was going to go spend an hour watching YouTube. But I mean,
sure.
How much better is that than my studio display?
I found my personal use with VR is I do that. I use an app called Beat Saber, which is a game on Meta. It's basically a rhythm-based movement game. So I use that as an exercise replacement because you get bored. Riding a bike or just walking is boring. Getting on a treadmill is boring. These kinds of things can spice that up. So it's good for that kind of purpose. That's one purpose, but it's not enough to buy. Again, enough to buy it. The other thing that I'm really fond of on Meta is, unfortunately, I'm not a fan of Meta. We've certainly said that on here many times as a company, and that when they tied the Quest products back into theirs, I was a little less than thrilled at that notion. But the app that I like is an app called Wander, which is built by a different company, and it basically takes the Google Street View data in full 3D VR, and you're there. So you just look up and you see the sky, you look down, you look left, you look right, you see exactly where you are. So as long as there's street view data for it, you can see it as if you're standing right in the middle of it. That is a fascinating use of the technology. That thing doesn't exist on Apple Pro as far as I know. There's some talk about bringing, Google Earth. Google Earth isn't exactly the same thing. It's not. It's a little bit different. So it leverages some of that data, but not in the same way.
Got it.
So it's a little bit different of an animal. So it's not quite, and it's not quite as easy to navigate. So, but the point is,
What's it?
they would go there. I might go there, but you know,
Yeah, thing is, I think Apple's idea was, hey, you'd wear this to do your work all day, and that's just
Sure.
not feasible. I mean, you can't do that. I mean,
no,
the weight of the headset is just going to be too much for, I would say, probably 90% of the people that
yeah, we're still not
try it.
there with being able to make those light enough and thin enough. If they had dropped some of the display technology in the front for showing eyes, maybe it would have been a little bit better, but it still wouldn't have been enough as far as I could tell. You know, everybody claimed that was a big problem. It's a problem, but I don't think it's as big a problem. I don't think that's why it's not, you know, that's not why we're not selling.
No.
Yeah, that's not the only thing wrong. So there's a few things going on. We'll see what they do. You know, I do think they'll probably come up with a cheaper one. We'll see where it goes. Maybe that cheaper one will allow them to go back and do a better one later once it takes off, if it does. But again, killer app, guys. Without the killer app, we're going nowhere.
I totally agree with you there. I do not see this thing continuing for very long.
But how do you get a killer
without the
app that
compelling use
crosses
case?
every line? I mean, one will be for
It
this
doesn't have to cross every line.
demographic, one for
No,
another
it doesn't.
one.
It doesn't have to cross every line. It just has to be something that enough people want.
Got to be the majority at least.
That
That
it's
they'll-
going to
that they'll
go
go
ahead
to it.
and boost sales, or at least draw people
be a
in to
reason
take
to get
more than a
people-
second.
you know,
It's got to be
It's like-
able to do something that no other platform can do. Watching movies in it is not the
I
killer.
agree more-
disagree.
I agree
I
more with
disagree
Joel
about
on this.
not
I think it's-
about a platform.
I think that
something
the
no other
device
platform can
hasn't
do.
found something that it alone can do. You can
Well,
do
it's-
everything
or-
on another
well,
device.
Or do better.
Or do
that is
better,
kind of
maybe.
where
I
I was
think
going.
you're
Yeah.
right.
or something different that only it does. That's the thing.
Right.
That's what I mean by killer app. It's got to be some reason to go there and do that. And the idea is it doesn't have to do everything. It doesn't have to be everything.
No.
If it does something great, but that thing isn't a productivity thing, I think people might still go there. If it was the best entertainment experience in the world, like you're in the middle of the amusement park or something, hey, that might be enough. But what I'm getting
just
at
needs to be compelling enough to draw
needs to be
folks
compelling.
in.
And guys, this is the same notion you get when you go to the car dealer. Chevrolet doesn't sell a whole lot of Corvettes, but guess what, kids? It's a halo car that brings you in. If it can bring, if this device had a killer app that could bring some people into the Apple ecosystem, Apple would sell other devices as well.
Just like the
This thing-
iPod was the
Very true.
iPod for a while was the Halo device for Apple. I mean,
And
that's why. Yeah,
That's what you need. You know, that's what this thing could be. It's not today, though, kids. It's not today.
That's true. That's
No.
true. It's not today, and that's unfortunate. And
It's,
you know
it's
what?
great tech. It's hard to see it not. You know, the Newton was great tech for the time, but it had enough.
Well, you knew it
flaws,
was right. It was.
and it was missing.
Yes. It
You know, it
is
was-
an amazing piece of technology, but so was
But it wasn't enough.
So was HoloLens, right? Microsoft
HoloLens.
HoloLens. But it wasn't enough
Well,
either.
HoloLens
Right.
again was great technology that was really poorly implemented. Unfortunately, very poorly implemented, and very poorly marketed. Quite frankly,
but
but that's a Microsoft
I'm not
thing.
trying to get into a debate on
No,
what
no,
was
but
bad,
you're right,
with it, but it was cool too. I mean, when you looked through the thing, it was cool too. It's just a matter of, all right, so what now, kids? I mean, what do we do? What are we
I
going to do
think what'll
now?
happen is I think it'll float along as it is for a while. They'll keep introducing it in other markets like they're doing right now. It'll limp
And they
along, and
are.
I suspect if these guys are right, they'll probably try to come out with a less expensive version, maybe in that $2,000 range. And that would be, that's the top end of iPhones, that's the top end of iPads, things like that. They could likely sell some more units than that. Maybe that'll be enough to trigger some developer activity, and that might get them there, might get them over the hump. Hard to know. If they could choose to carry on with it, that's likely what they'll do for better or worse.
For better or worse. And again, this is a wait and see. You don't necessarily know that they're going to kill it. You don't necessarily know what they're going to do with it right now.
And Apple's not talking right now. Of course not. They're not.
And you wouldn't necessarily know that something was wrong until the day that they decide to make it go away, right?
Well,
Until they
that's
decide
true too.
Because
Well,
they always play close to the vest.
And to be fair, I mean, again, the Newton days were a very different market. For Apple was in a very different position then too. They were barely keeping afloat at that in those days, back at that time. But nowadays, they can
That little
afford to,
piece of garbage.
but they can
Yeah.
they can afford to float along for a while here with this thing. And Apple
Mhm.
does not have a history of, today I released a product, tomorrow I've abandoned the product. They don't have that history, especially in recent years.
Right.
They'll support it for a while, even if they don't put out a new one, kind of thing.
True.
I mean, look how long we've lived with the current iterations of things like the Magic Mouse and Magic Keyboard with the stupid, where they still have the Lightning connector. They haven't fixed that. They've
And
let it
on
go.
the bottom
But they
of
didn't
it
get rid of it,
too.
and everybody knows, and people don't want to buy them, but yet they're still out there. They still hang around for a while.
True.
They'll do that. I think they'll do that again with this product. It'll hang around for a while, even if they don't come out with a successor.
Well, we'll have to wait and see. One of the things that there's a lot that's going on with Apple, and there's a lot that's been happening, at least in Europe. One of the things that caught my eye, things that caught my eye recently was, I'm referencing an article here in our show notes from Apple Insider. India's antitrust regulators decided that Apple has abused its App Store dominance. And
yeah,
and I did.
Oh my
Joel,
goodness, that
help
makes me
me
laugh.
here, please.
But look
So-
where.
yeah. Well, India, this is they did a 3-year investigation here. And it says Apple's been using their antitrust behaviors by forcing App Store developers to use its in-app payment system. That's the primary thing that they're talking about in there. And they say that Apple's 30% fee is too high, which, it's debatable.
It's not 30% for everybody. Yada yada.
No,
yada.
it's not
We know that.
30% for everybody. It's 15% for most folks.
And look
Right.
what it gets them. My God, they couldn't touch those demographics anywhere else. They couldn't.
Yeah.
I think you're right. I don't think that they would. What I don't understand, like you said, the India's competition commission has been investigating this since 2021,
Yep.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Following a complaint by a group called Together We Fight Society.
Yep.
What I don't understand is how does this really, I mean, is the juice worth the squeeze here, kids? I mean, is it really,
Consider India's population? Yes, there's more people. For like a lot of people talk about, even in America, how in America, some people, especially some older people, that
Right.
their only computer is their iPhone or their other smart device. That
Right.
is really common in India, even in rural India, where they're
to use your
more have
phone
to
as your-
have that.
To use your phone as your primary device is very common, but an
Correct.
iPhone is not. iPhone
That
is
is
not the
also
market
correct.
leader.
Right. In fact,
No.
I don't think
No,
our
it's
company
because
even
Android
was showing.
devices can be produced very, very cheaply.
Yep.
And especially if you go back a release or two in terms of Android platform.
Just don't go back to KitKat because Google just dropped that. But anywho,
But you understand what I'm saying. I mean,
Yeah.
it doesn't have to be the latest, greatest version. It doesn't have to be 13, 14. They can go back to, Android 10, Android 11 and save a couple of bucks there from a manufacturing perspective. But even still, all right, more often than not, it's going to be an Android device. So I don't understand what the issue or the deal is. So-
maybe they're just maybe some people are trying to figure out why it's
I don't
Apple
know.
stuff's not selling in India. I don't know. I know that
I don't know.
my
I don't
company
understand.
that my company when you get a corporate cell device in India, it ain't an iPhone. So
Yeah.
I mean, they're going way cheaper in India than they are here.
It's just really interesting that these places that are making these kinds of judgments against Apple doesn't have the market lead in any of those places. So
Mhm.
So what's how can they be abusing a market position if they don't have it?
I don't know. I guess it depends on how they define that, right?
Right.
How do they define the market? If they define a separate market for Android
Right.
stuff and Apple stuff, then of course Apple has a lead in the Apple space.
Right.
But if you define it as
Seeing as they're the only
cell
ones
phone
in
market
the
or
Apple
digital market,
space,
I'm very confused. I think their definitions are a little weird, but
Well,
Yeah.
thankfully, this report has not been publicly released yet. There's no official statement from the CCI yet. All right. And there's also no published time scale on what next steps are going to be or what the result may be. So
Interesting.
it just, it, I simply feel with with Epic's lawsuit having come in, and they lost, by the way, they lost most of that. It's just opened up this can of worms where everybody
It
and their
has.
brother is just coming out at Apple. And not that I'm an Apple fanboy or that I'm trying to protect Apple, because God knows the one thing that they don't need is me trying to protect them. All right. They've got their own army of lawyers and whatnot to be able to do that crap. They don't need lowly little me. Right. But I just don't understand why everybody's jumping on. Although there is some good news at the end of this tunnel, it isn't necessarily another train. That light that they see, Apple has apparently beat a lawsuit over forcing developers to use a closed ecosystem. Larry, what's going on here?
You know what? I was interested enough in this to give a very good friend of mine who's a retired attorney, a very, very good one, by the way. And we chatted about this because he's an Apple user. So he gets Apple, at least he understands it.
Sure.
And before I actually say anything about this, I know there are those out there who think Apple wins way too many of its lawsuits. And you might even believe that they should have lost this one. But in reality, after talking with my friend, this is a classic case of how to win a lawsuit. And let me explain. In business and even in personal life, there are two primary conditions that will help you win any lawsuit. A lot of other factors, but there's two main things. A, you need to be right. If you're right, it's a whole lot easier to defend your case. B, you need the best freaking lawyers on the planet. And guess who's got them?
Oh, by far.
In this case, I think Apple had A and B working to their advantage. So there's no way they were ever going to lose this, regardless of the Apple hater syndrome working against them. It's just that's my take on it. But maybe you guys got a different one.
Well, this was also done in court in California too, which doesn't hurt them.
Doesn't hurt them a bit.
Right. Yeah.
Make that D then C, whatever.
That for them, you're on your home turf, as it were.
Yeah.
Agreed. So they have at least a little bit of
But they do win a fair amount of their lawsuits, you got to admit.
Oh, absolutely do. Even when they're not there, it's true.
Does anybody know how many lawyers they retain? My God.
More than I have.
All of them.
Yeah, it's all of them. There you go.
All of them.
They definitely have a lot. That's for sure.
So it's got to be absolutely unreal. But
again, to broadly talk about this one last thing about this is that it always amazes me, all these Me Too lawsuits, and I don't mean Me Too as in the Me Too movement, of course.
No, I understand what you're saying.
These lawsuits that come up all the time, because the reality is it is a closed or semi-closed ecosystem, less closed every day, it seems like, but it's still a closed ecosystem. And if you don't want that market, don't participate in that market. Why is that so hard for people to understand? Don't get into it. There are other choices out there.
I got a number.
Choices out there. Hey, what kind of number you got?
Apple's army of lawyers currently is approximately 620.
Oh my God. It's a company on its own.
I rest my case, Judge.
That is unreal.
But you have to admit though, they are sued in so many countries on so many little things. You could easily keep that many people busy. But what's interesting is you gotta wonder what percentage of their net costs are dedicated to feeding this beast.
Yeah.
This is ridiculous.
Yeah. And where would we be in terms of technology? Where would we be in terms of devices and engineering and innovation if they didn't have to employ
And we
620.
and we talk about this in terms of Apple, but this is true for Google. This is true for
I was
Microsoft.
just,
This is true
you're
for
absolutely
Meta. This is
right.
true for all of these guys.
Yeah.
The big three have given us a lot. We can't downplay that. They really have.
Good, again, good and bad. But the point is, the
Agreed.
legal teams that are required to support that stuff, because they can get sued in every tiny municipality in the world and have to defend themselves, and it happens over and over and over. And it's not just government suing them; it's individuals suing them in patent suits, and on and on and on. Right? So they're all very busy. They all need big legal teams, unfortunately.
Right.
It's just kind of the nature of the thing.
Yeah. Oh well.
What are you going to do?
Well,
talk about.
I know what we're going to do. I know
unpack
what we're
some Samsung.
We're going to go ahead and switch segments to the Mobile Linux segment and talk about the Galaxy Unpacked event.
Well, there you go then.
Yeah.
We'll talk about some Galaxy.
So
that was this past week, right? What was it? Wednesday they held it, I think. It was the
Wednesday or Tuesday.
Was the big event, right? So they did a lot of stuff, as they always did. They showed new phones, a Flip and a Fold. Flip, was it the 6 and the Fold 6?
The 6.
They showed a new Watch 7. They showed a new Watch Ultra. They showed a Ring.
They did.
And I'm sure there was
a Galaxy Tab S Ultra tablet.
A Tab S Ultra.
Right.
And
that may be so. See, according to the source that we're citing, more is in a device that announced earlier this year, the Galaxy Ring wearable, right? And the Galaxy. No, they did talk about the tablet. So there you go. All right.
So
they did.
Which tablet? I'm sorry.
The Galaxy Tab S10 Ultra.
The 10S Ultra. Yeah. Okay. So here they are again, and again, most of these things are, again, small iterative, other than the Ring. We'll talk about the Ring in a minute, and the Watch Ultra, which are new. But the other products are pretty much iterative from their predecessors in a lot of ways.
Pretty much.
I would argue that the Galaxy Fold 6 didn't go far enough, although I understand the Flip 6 everybody seems to like it a lot over the Flip 5. But the Fold 6, it's a very meh kind of update to me. It's still got the dang fold in the middle, the crease in the middle. It's still got,
it does,
it still doesn't have the right dimensions as far as I'm concerned, but
I happen to agree.
I think the outer screen's still too narrow to be useful, but that's, those are my personal takes on it. But having said that, it's just Samsung doing their next generation of stuff. Now, the new things here, obviously, other than there are some new features, and as always in each of the things. I think I was talking to you guys in the pre-show about how the Flip and the Fold are now showing the Google Interpreter mode, which I think is a great way of doing translation using the two screens that are on the devices. And it's been available only on Pixel devices up till now, so it's interesting to see it show up on other devices. We do know that I don't know all the new features in the Watch 7 as opposed to the Watch 6. But we do know there's also a Watch Ultra, which to me looks like they took the existing watch and moved it a little bit toward the appearance of an Apple Watch Ultra.
It looks to me like they took the Watch 6, all right, the screen from the round screen from the Watch 6, and slapped it on the body of the Apple Watch Ultra and didn't get rid of the corners. All right, and to me it looks ugly as sin to have that round screen on top of that square body, square peg, round hole, round peg, square hole, doesn't fit. And that's where I'm coming from with it.
But don't you think Samsung ran this by a lot of people before?
I think it's polarizing. There's a lot of people that like Chris that say it's ugly. I don't mind it.
I'm in the I like it boat too. I'm fine with it.
Yeah, I'm not like it enough to buy it, because here's the thing. I don't need it.
I don't need it. If I had a Samsung watch, I probably would.
Right, but what's clear to me is especially since I've ordered the Garmin watch, was is that both Apple and now Samsung are trying to steal a little bit of the Garmin market away, considering, and this is something I didn't
They
even
are.
know until I started looking at this, but Garmin's the number 2 smartwatch company, period. You know,
Maybe
after
they're the biggest
Apple.
competitor then too. Possibly.
Right. So so they're selling more than Wear OS. So, that there's a good reason for Samsung to do this. Same thing with Apple, Is it as good as what you can do on some of the Garmin watches? We'll see. But
So
I don't think so myself. That's my initial opinion, but when I actually get one, we'll see what happens. But
yeah, there you go. And of course, the other piece of this is that, and again, they're iterative changes and whatnot. They're coming out with the Galaxy Ring, which does some of this health monitoring without with a longer battery life, obviously, than you would get out of a watch. I laughed because their initial stuff said, "Hey, this is designed to be worn 7x24 by 365, but it has to be charged every
But
week."
you can't wear it that
yeah,
way. I've got an Aura
No.
ring, right? I've got an Aura ring, and I've had one.
That's my point.
For a number
Right.
of years, and it is. I enjoy it very much. It's very unobtrusive. You just put it on, and you completely forget that you have it on, and it keeps track of all this stuff. It looks at your pulse ox. It looks at your heart rate. It looks at your activity and nudges you to get up and move around and things. And it's good. And normally, I mean, you charge it maybe once every 3.5 to 4 days. All right. Mine's a little bit older, so I think the battery is now I'm really kind of once every 2.5 days. I've lost a whole day, if you will.
Well, what did
Capacity.
Samsung say this one was good for? 10 days or something?
The Galaxy
Ultra? Big number.
Not the Ultra, the ring.
The
ring.
He's talking
The
about
ring.
the ring right
Oh,
now. But yeah,
I'm
the ring.
sorry. Yeah, no,
That's all right. No, so it comes in sizes 5 to 12. All right. It's got a 17 milliamp battery for sizes 5, 6, and 7. It's on sizes 8, 9, 10, and 11. It comes with an 18.5 milliamp battery, and the size 12 ring has a 22.5 milliamp battery. So the bigger the battery, the longer you can go without charging it. I will tell you though that if it does things the way that Aura Ring does, or similarly, it's going to be a very, very interesting sort of thing. From it, and it will actually eat into some of their smartwatch sales. All right.
Yeah.
Because it does effectively the same thing that the smartwatch does, but without telling you what time it is.
Without a display of any
Without a
kind.
display,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
It's all on your
Right.
it's all on your phone, and you check on your phone for those stats during the day. But it is very, very easy to wear, and it's very very unobtrusive.
I would also say it's very basic when you compare to the smartwatch, considering some of the smartwatches don't even have GPSs in it. This certainly doesn't either.
Yeah,
So-
the
No.
problem that you have with
This is
with
purely a
these-
health thing.
Well, it is clearly a
Correct.
health thing, but the problem that you have with these rings, all right, is they cost $300 to $500
Yeah.
for these
They're not
rings,
cheap.
right? And the problem with that is because it looks just like a wedding band or anything else. I mean, if you're going to go ahead and spend money on a decent piece of jewelry, you're going to spend about that much and get gold, all right, and or some sort of semi-precious or precious stones along with it potentially. This is a lot for a piece of electronics that after 3 to 5 years, that battery is going to be dead and gone, and you're not going to be able to use it anymore.
Right.
It's not replaceable, is it?
No.
I mean, the battery's just done.
No, the device is done.
There's
All
no
right.
servicing on it like there is
No.
some other devices. Yeah.
No.
Okay.
No. And that's the one thing that I've learned about mine is that, once that battery decides to go, all right, you're out of luck. You're just out of luck.
Yep.
True.
So,
Yeah, I'm not sure where these are going to go. I mean, right now there's a lot of people talking about them. There's a lot of people saying Apple should do the same thing. I'm not sure I agree with any of that,
I
but there's
don't.
people
Yeah,
talking about it.
I don't
think
agree
so.
with that
I've
at all.
never
Having
had the
had
urge
mine,
yet, but
having
maybe I
had
will.
mine for about 3 years. All right. Um, great device, but I don't know how much longer it's going to last and
Right.
hold out in terms of battery life.
You know what I miss, and it wasn't out for about a few years, was Microsoft's band. Remember the band that they had
I
for a
did have
while there?
Microsoft
I do.
Band, and it wasn't
a watch. It
No,
was, but we had those features, but it wasn't what it was about, and it wasn't all that well constructed in some ways, but it was clever and it was unique and it was different.
For 2015. It was very clever. I got Michelle and I, my wife and I, both bands. The only thing that was bad about these bands, the charger was completely proprietary and it was expensive.
True, it's true.
B,
The band wasn't, but the charger was.
well, the band is. I mean, you couldn't just go and get any cable and charge. There was a
you could not.
proprietary connector on it, and it was very, very stiff and very hard.
Yes, it was.
Flex. It didn't flex in any way,
No.
shape, or form like a watch band might. It didn't give or move like a watch band might. And
But at least it was an interesting product category. I thought it was very fascinating.
difficult. It was difficult to wear at night to get that sleep data that you
True.
wanted from it. All right. I woke up a number of different times with it hurting. All right, because
never bothered me that way.
it was stiff and wouldn't give or move, and depending on where you had it on your wrist, it would restrict movement of your wrist. So,
yeah, I didn't run into that problem with it so much, but I know what you're saying. But again, I apologize because I can't remember what the name of that product was at the time.
I remember it though.
Microsoft Band.
Was it just called Band? I thought it had a more clever name than that.
It was called Microsoft Band. That's it.
Okay.
That's it. And for 2015, it was the hottest electronic.
It was a thing.
It was the hottest thing for Christmas. So,
well, we didn't have really other things at that point doing a lot of this stuff. So
yeah,
it was still relatively new, relatively recent kind of technologies.
Agreed.
Okay, interesting.
But
interesting.
So that's kind of sort of where we were with Galaxy Unpacked and the Watch 7 and the Watch Ultra. As well as the Ring. There are a lot of other sites that are going to go into details about, what was this, that, and the other with the foldable phones. We have talked so much about foldables over the past few months. To be honest, I don't see too much of a difference between what's going on with the actual foldable screen, and not the Galaxy Fold, but the foldable screens that are in both it and the Flip, in terms of improvements. All right, so I think most of our comments are still valid.
The OnePlus Open is still, to me, a better device at this point. But
right,
mileage may vary, but to me, it's still a better device than the Samsung.
From my perspective, it's still a better device as well.
Right.
Yeah.
The way I look at it too, like I was watching MKBHD and a couple others that were doing videos on these devices, and I could still see it good now in the Samsung's videos. They didn't show any visible crease. Yeah, but in every other video I've seen, of course, it's
intentionally.
There.
Well, I think
you're
what
right.
They did with this time with the Fold, they came very, very close, and perhaps maybe comparable to the OnePlus Open in terms of hinge technology or foldable screen, which is nice. All right, but I don't. But it didn't surpass that, and why I'm not going into a whole bunch of, oh my gosh, this is so amazing, blah blah blah, in terms of gushing about the screen on the Fold, is because we've already seen it on the OnePlus Open, and we've got extensive coverage on it on the site.
We do.
All right.
We do.
I still say, give me a micro bezel and put the two screens together with a tiny little hinge and let it fold.
Surface Phone 3 is what Larry wants.
Thank you. Surface Phone 3, 4, 5.
Again, Chris and I was a very big fan of the Surface Duo, which essentially was that had they gone another generation where the screens would have come out a little further, a little less bezel,
in between. Yeah,
they would have been. They would have been there. Right. That gap between the two screens was still noticeable. Although, to be fair, they used it with a kind of another display on the edge that would give you notifications of what was going on the device. So they made
Right,
use of
yeah.
that.
Too.
They did use it, and there was some cleverness going on there. But again, I don't think the device. Unfortunately for them, they released both those devices with some problems out to shoot that they mostly correct. If you look at the state of that device today, it runs great these days.
Yes, it does.
But the world has kind of gone past that now. That's the
It
problem.
unfortunately has.
But they were on the right track had they just stuck the track a little longer and stayed with it.
Well, if
Longer,
they
I
still
think
keep
got
putting the fold crease on the fold, I know they're not getting Joel and I's money. They're not
Yeah.
happening.
No, they've got.
So,
But the OnePlus, but Joel saw the OnePlus Open that I had, and you were kind of shocked at how far they
Yeah, it was
Pretty
nice.
close.
Yeah, it was pretty nice. I mean, it was this
It's
close
still
to me
there,
saying to buy it.
but
Yeah.
it's just shy of But the point is, they came a long way from what we saw on the Samsungs and from what we saw even on the Pixel Fold, which I love the Pixel Fold as well. But the crease is definitely very clearly there. But you don't see it hardly at all on the OnePlus
Well,
Open.
if they can do that, why
Or-
can't Samsung? Why can't Apple?
I don't know. Well, part of it was the hinge, and Samsung did make a hinge that's closer to the OnePlus Open's hinge. They did do that,
yeah.
so they're closer to it, But again, I don't know why it's so hard to. Well, I guess I'm not. That's why I'm not a.
I'm seeing some
engineer,
people to
right?
say that I saw a few people that said that at least with the flip variant that they'd say buy the Motorola Razr, the newest version of the
Interesting.
Razr.
Interesting.
They thought it would look better. The new Razr, the newest version of the Razr looked better than this.
Wow.
So,
Interesting.
Well,
Well, I guess we'll
well.
see.
unfortunately, Motorola's got mediocre hardware in it, so
Yeah,
true.
yeah. What are you going to do?
Yeah.
It's always
Right.
been the problem.
And
Right.
they used to be so good too.
yeah.
Yeah, I had several of them. I mean, I had a Droid 2, and I had the Z Force. I had that one, the one with the magnetic backs on them.
Yep.
And they
Enterprise
know how
used
to do it.
Enterprise bought more Motorola StarTACs than you can count.
Then they knew what
Well-
to do with. They had a bunch of those in 2003, 2004 that were.
Yep.
What was that dockable phone that they had with the keyboard? That was a clever device for them from Motorola.
Don't remember.
Dang it, it's on the tip of my tongue because I know people have bought they had to keep that keyboard dock.
Yep, it was
And
clever.
they bought that and they made it work with the Raspberry Pi, believe it or not.
Is that the one where you inserted the phone, the whole phone into the keyboard?
Was
dock
something
sort of
like that.
into
More
the-
like it
No,
into a dock.
kind
Okay.
of. Yeah, it was. I forget. I think the name began with an A, but my brain is
You're
stopped
right.
as what it was called. But that was a clever thing out of Motorola. But then they went out and they came out with
Atrix.
that's it. That was
Atrix.
it.
The
Yeah.
Atrix. All right.
And then they came out with that highly customizable phone, but it was based on meh hardware, and it was
Yep.
very clever. But it was a nice
I
phone.
had
but it
one.
wasn't-
Yeah.
but
I
it
had
wasn't all
one.
that great. It was okay.
Yeah, it was all right.
They haven't really released anything hardware wise that's been exciting since then. They've been
Motorola, no.
okay.
No, they
Other
haven't.
than the
All right.
Razor, I mean, the Razor, bringing back a brand from the past.
And that's
I
a
think I had a
shame.
Razor.
I think that's a shame because they're an iconic brand name. They always
They
have
are.
been.
They are, and back in the day, the Razor was a great thing. It wasn't a smartphone, but it was pretty good for what it did, and smartphones
It
weren't
was.
a thing at that point.
It
So
was.
but the Razor today it's interesting to hear somebody say that they like it better than the Samsung Flip because again, it's kind of meh hardware, but you're right.
I'm gonna go look at one just for the hell of it.
Hey, there you go. There you go. We'll be interested to hear about that.
So,
Yep.
Anyway, so that's kind of sort of the Galaxy Unpacked event. A lot of these, unfortunately, a lot of the changes for some of these devices were really just incremental, sort of evolutionary, not revolution, but just, but it's more of an evolutionary sort of change, which is unfortunate. Although the Galaxy Watch Ultra, I like the size of 47 millimeters. I like a bigger screen. I like a bigger watch. I just don't like the square body and a round screen on top of each other. It just seems like a square peg, round hole sort of thing. or vice versa.
You probably don't even like Apple's infograph overlay, do you? Which is a round circle on an Apple Watch. It's just
Not
it gives you a lot of
Except
info. That's
the
all.
difference
No,
is
it
they
does.
shove
It
stuff.
does.
They can shove stuff in the corners. That's the difference
Well,
with the
yeah,
Apple.
you
Which
got
is
to
great.
Yeah.
You can't.
You got
Right.
pixels you can use there. In this case, you don't have anything you can use.
Right. No,
It's
this is
space.
just a raised
It's dead
round
space, yeah.
bezel on top of a square body, and that's kind of sort of what I have. I just don't.
But
Look,
you have to wonder then, does
if
that,
they needed more room, just make the watch a little bit thicker.
but don't you have to wonder? It makes me kind of in the back of my head go, okay, why would you do that? And is it because you're prepping people for the notion of the fact that you're going to release a square screen thing at some point? I don't know.
That's a
Makes me
weird
speculate.
transitional point to introduce in terms
Just
of
curious. Just
of the product.
curious.
Yeah.
it really is-
if you're
there's no
going to do
functional
that,
reason to
just
do
give
it.
me the square watch.
But there
Yeah.
was no functional reason to do what they did.
No.
So
At least
I'm
they
curious
matched
where they were
what
headed.
Apple did with the sapphire screen
Yeah,
on it.
they did.
I mean,
They did, and they did make it a little bit more rugged.
And
All right,
and I've
but-
said this before. I am not objectionable to the notion of evolutionary versus revolutionary. I just don't think there was enough change here at all.
See,
You got to
I
have
agree.
evolution before you can have revolution.
You know,
quite
to
frankly.
me, this is things mostly didn't change. You know, for the most part, I wish
Right.
they had a little bit more. So
I mean,
right.
it's not to the point where it's going to be a great hiking watch for me with avid hikers like myself. I don't see it as replacing either
no,
that
not at all.
or the Apple Watch. Although we'll say the Apple Watch at least has the satellite stuff and the AFib stuff in it.
Yeah, true.
But even then, I mean, this watch I got coming, I can probably wear it for 30 days in a normal situation with no tracking, and I would not use the battery up, and that's an amazing
big.
device. I mean, and that's something. At least I see the Ultra Samsung Ultra watch does what they promised 10 days, I think. So we'll see. I think these are great watches if you're starting to hike. Even the Pixel Watch, the original Pixel Watch, is actually just fine. If you're just doing a day hike, a shorter day hike, unlike the one I'm going to be doing here in a few weeks. But if you're a through hiker or an overnight camper, there you go.
Right.
So,
right. What we'll see. We'll see.
yeah.
The next, I want to go ahead then and move us on to our next story in the mobile Linux segment, which unfortunately is the AT&T
More bad
breach.
news.
Yeah. Nearly every cell customer's call log over the last 6 or so months minimum, and text records have been exposed. Larry, help me get through this. Pour the drinks and pass them
I'm going to
around
give you
or
a couple of words on this, but I'm going to end it with something you probably haven't thought about, but I think people should.
What's that?
So in the past 3 to 4 years, there's no doubt we've all become hardened to these security breaches. We get a new one every week, and we say the same thing every time. Dear company, spend some money on security and you'll have fewer of these breaches. You'll never eliminate them, but you can mitigate the frequency and their extent with a little bit of security. So AT&T's recent breach, it was huge, there's no doubt. But the type of information taken wasn't quite as extensive as with other breaches like LastPass and some of the other big ones. It was, though, the largest single breach of user information ever. This breach contained boatloads of personal information containing every phone number AT&T customers have ever called or texted. It included the numbers of people on other wireless networks, the number of times they interacted, and the call duration. So here's what bothers me. All this stuff, like always, is going to end up being sold on the dark web. If some spouses get a hold of this, there's going to be a lot of happy divorce lawyers. That's all I can say.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is mostly called what we call the metadata to calls and to text. It's not the actual text. It's not the actual audio to the call.
No.
It's the metadata about the numbers that were involved, how long they were talking, that kind
But
of
if
stuff.
you suspect your spouse is seeing somebody
It's
and you
still
know
bad.
that phone number and you can corroborate it with the metadata, one of you is in trouble.
Well, and I read an article that made reference to this as well and said, look, it's not that hard to take that and tie that number to names and addresses and things like
Sure.
that. It's not that hard
Mhm.
to put that data together if you really want to do that. But I'm getting really tired of all these idiots and their breaches and the frequency of the breaches, like you said, Larry.
Yeah.
You understand that security is never flawless. There's no such thing. There's no such thing as an impenetrable vault. There's always ways to get there. But the point is, you can slow them down, and you can certainly reduce the frequency with which this happens. And they're not doing it.
This may be bad, but it's not as bad as if they'd have gotten social security numbers, credit cards, names, addresses, and all of that out in the open stuff. But it's
Now,
bad.
Here's
it's bad.
Here's the bad thing. One of the bad things that happens with all this data that's out there, and you all may have similar things. We all get a lot of I'll call them fake calls and fake spam messages, and the problem is, if they get some of your data, it's really easy for them to seem like they're valid.
Yep,
Mhm.
that's exactly
Because
what they do.
They'll quote something or they'll say something. You'll go, oh, they really do have a, gee, did I owe that debt? I don't remember owing a debt. I don't remember that, but maybe I
Mhm.
did forget. Maybe it's this, because they have enough data that makes it seem realistic. Please, people, if you don't know, don't answer, don't call back, don't do any of that stuff. Save yourself some grief. If there's something that they have that they need to talk to you about, they've got to put it in writing and send it to you anyway.
They'll send you a letter. Yeah.
If it's real, they have to put it in writing and send it to you. So the point
Right.
is, these breaches lead to a lot of this data coming through text, coming through calls. And it's the easiest way to try to scam you, because give you that sense of urgency. You think you got to do something. There you go.
Mhm.
I get a lot of these things quite regularly from different sources, and it's like, and I've got some of those services that not just what the carrier does, but the services say what it is, whether it's a scam, they think it's a scam or not. I can't tell you how many of them show up as scam alert on top of my
Yep.
screen
Mhm.
all the time, and they sound valid when you actually listen to the message. They really
They
do.
do.
They're very good at that. So I warn my family daily to ignore this stuff. So be careful out there, folks. This is just another one of these. Here we go, and like you said, Larry, I think we have to talk about one of these every week. It seems like,
True.
one or two of these
This one
every
was
week.
really bad. This one was really bad because they got like everything from like 2022 to like 2023. So if you're an AT&T customer, all right,
Again,
wireless
everything
customer, they got
they
you.
got the
They got you.
metadata on the calls. They didn't get your personal information, your credit cards, your addresses, or anything like that. But in terms of the size of the breach, yes. In terms of the quality of the data that they got, yeah, not so much.
Maybe not so
But-
much, but
it could
your data
be
got.
combined. But the point is, it could be combined with other data to
Right.
produce some very interesting results.
Right.
So be careful, folks. Be careful out there. These things get used in all kinds of ways.
Right. And speaking of privacy and security, this one I thought was a somewhat encouraging. Google is apparently choosing privacy over functionality with their new Find My network.
Yep. Well, it is.
So-
It is, and it isn't when you think about
Yeah.
this. Yeah. Because so basically, their Find My network will only work if you're in an area, an active area, like a large area. Like, for example, if I'm out in the woods, Find My ain't gonna work, for one. But
Mhm.
and then this is all in the name of privacy, supposedly. So two companies were available. They're working on AirTag like trackers for their Find My network, from Pebblebee and Chipolo. But I've yet to see any of these. But
Yeah, me neither.
yeah, so I mean, but this could be a good thing, could be a bad thing. I don't know.
Mhm.
I mean, I think especially with both this Find My and the Apple Find My networks, I think a lot of people are misinterpreting on what these things and how accurate these things are. Great example here is I have a tile on my keychain. All right. I'm on a hike and that thing keeps squawking my phone saying, "Hey, you left your keys behind," and they're in my pocket.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
Yeah.
I don't know if AirTags does that, but
well, I hear flaws with the whole AirTags thing, and then you guys remember early on in the AirTags release the whole conversation about it being used for people that stalk other people, and I think Google is trying to do their best to try to learn from what happened to other people. I think they're trying to learn from that. I don't know if they're doing it right or not, but at least they're trying to learn from it.
Right. I mean, and the honest thing is these AirTags, especially the taggy like things, not the ones with the phones attached to them.
Sure.
You're not going to get absolutely positively accurate coordinates for them because there ain't no GPS in them. I mean,
no, but I have heard a lot. But and again, I'm trying to remember if Google works the same way that Apple does, in that it'll use devices around you to try to bounce at where you are.
It does.
So it's going to depend. Like I said, it's going to depend on the density of those devices as to whether it can see what's going on. But I mean, I've certainly seen many conversations about people whose bags were stolen from the airport, that they found them at somebody's house. By using the tag, they were able to find where it was, and so there's a lot of good to be had from this too. There's good and there's bad, and we have to decide, like anything else, what do we want to participate in?
Parents have been putting them on their teenager. Some parents have been putting on their teenagers' cars so they can keep an eye on where their kids are. I will say, but and that might work. Once they get to a place, they're probably going to be easier to find. But the thing is that's when in movement, they're not going to be that accurate, to be honest. But so we'll see what happens.
But you'll know they're going somewhere. I use
that's all you'll know.
My family actually is on Find My. They know where I am. I know where they are.
We make that a point as well, and that's a good thing.
They asked to be on it. They asked me to be on it. They asked to be on it with me. They wanted, and I have one family member who is very, very notorious for making long trips and then getting lost in the trip and not really understanding where they are themselves. And Find My on their phone has been absolutely invaluable in helping them figure out how to get out of wherever they got themselves into, wherever place they're not supposed to be, or wherever the place they're lost.
Well, you know what? This, in the case of an actual, and it doesn't happen often, but in the case of an actual abduction, that can be totally invaluable. I mean,
absolutely. So there's some good things, but there's
someone
definitely
steals
bad
your
like
kid. That's a big deal,
But
the thing that I'm seeing with the stalking thing, I'm seeing a lot of people are, especially with the new tools that Apple's provided for their AirTags, that tells you if they're nearby. A lot of people assume that, that AirTag's there because somebody's trying to stop me. Well, it couldn't be that person just forgot the damn tag in the car or whatever.
True.
I mean, it's to me, it's another tool for the Karens to worry about.
Again, I think it's got some good things. It's got some bad things, but you have to know what you're looking for. Joel, you said this all the time. When you're gonna look at anything, this is just one example, but when you're gonna look at any of this stuff, you've got to use some of your own brains, and when you're interpreting what you're seeing and what you're looking at, don't jump to that one conclusion because it could understand what it could
don't
be.
always look to the bad thing with it. Sometimes it's just somebody left it behind. Or somebody dropped it in the parking lot.
I get the alerts all the time about leaving behind my iPad or leaving behind my headphones or whatever. It's like, come on, I know what's really going on. Again, it's just a matter of really knowing what's really happening, or use your own brains, people, but they're good tools, but just understand that they're just tools. They're not perfect. They're not flawless. They're not, like I said, use your brains with it.
Engage your Mark I brain, because that's what God gave it to you for.
So this is interesting that Google's choosing to try to follow the privacy model a little bit more closely. That's an interesting decision for them to make.
Yep.
Very interesting.
Yep.
Good deal.
But will ARM take over the Windows universe?
Well, we will find that out after this brief message. Hi, This is Christopher Spera with iTechGear.org, and I'm here to tell you that iTechGear.org and the iTechGear Weekly are on Patreon. Patreon is a platform for creators, allowing them to express their creative side in an organized, marketable fashion and earn a living or create a really cool kind of side hustle. You can create a community around your hobby of choice. You can gain followers. You can get members and supporters all along the way. You can create subscription products that for a pledged amount every month, you'll provide to your members and followers. Setup is easy. Prices are reasonable, and you can have your pledges auto deposited into an account of your choice every month. With iTechGear.org, our initial offering is a monthly newsletter for just $3 a month. This is our initial offering, and we'll have other tiers and other products and other offers up in the coming months. Become a patron of our site. Grow with us, and we'll provide you with the tech understanding that you're missing right now. Join us on Patreon at www.patreon.com/iTechGear. That's www.patreon.com/iTechGear. And welcome back to the iTechGear Weekly, episode number 98. The hot sign is clearly important. And I want to go ahead and move us to our Windows segment. Now, there's a really interesting sort of video that, Chris, you had sort of brought to our attention. It is titled Arm or Harm, but I don't know if that's really an accurate kind of.
No, yeah, that's one of the topics. Yeah, there's quite a few topics this guy talks about. And it's interesting. So the notion is that this guy is kind of taking a technical spin and talking about a bunch of stuff. He's talking about Microsoft and Qualcomm and whether or not some of the promises that they've made about the ARM technology and how they've implemented it are they broken promises? Are they problematic? Are they this guy refers to himself as Level 1 Techs. That's his YouTube reference, his channel. And he talks about a lot of these things. And what I like about his conversation is very long. If you choose to watch this, it's almost an hour long. And it's a little bit rambling. And he does certain things like, instead of calling it, he should call it Surface Pro X, but he calls it the Surface X all the time when he talks about the Surface Pro X. But he talks about these ARM devices and Microsoft's history with ARM and the fact that they keep reiterating ARM and they never quite get there. And so we're seeing all these, and he's talking about how all these bloggers now are like all on the bandwagon now, like this is the greatest thing since sliced bread. But here's the things that are missing. And he refers to it mostly in terms of gaming. And we all talked about this before. Drivers aren't there yet. And there's a lot of this thing that, graphics drivers, especially graphics, the APIs aren't there that should be there yet. Same thing is true actually on Android, believe it or not. They have the same problem keeping graphics up to date on Android. So if there's a bug, the bug never gets fixed kind of thing. Not in graphics. But those are the kinds of things that he's talking about here and some holes in it. But then he goes on to talk about some of the challenges that about Microsoft introducing all this crap that people don't want, like the ads, and some of the challenges and problems where the Windows platform has gone. The fact that again, something that I've brought up before on this conversation is things like the fact that the current Finder, the File Explorer. Sorry to use the Apple terminology there. The File Explorer is basically it's almost a web app now. It's not even really like it was. So its efficiency and performance isn't as good as its predecessors, and things like that. And some of these things that have been changed in Windows are not for the better and have not improved the product. And he has some very good technical explanations about what has been changed and what doesn't work the way it used to and why it doesn't. And he goes on about this. And I think it's actually a very interesting kind of overview of what Microsoft has done, and that they're trying to make they're kind of presenting ARM as a kind of a clean start, if you will, trying to kind of clean up the problems of the past. But they put this thing out there without the proper support. They didn't even have the developer kit properly ready when they released the products to market. So there's some challenges. So the question is, so developers are left to, well, where do we go for development support and help? How do we get, if we need to get to the Adreno graphics that are in this thing, how do we get there? Well, they ask Qualcomm, or they ask, and they're not getting the answers they need yet. So it may be, again, I think ARM is the way this stuff has to go. But if it's not properly supported, kids, it's not going to work. They're not going to be able to get there. And so I keep wondering if, once again, if Microsoft is fumbling the ball here, if Qualcomm's fumbling the ball here, or making assumptions that are not valid. I don't know. But it was a good watch, and it was a good kind of overview of some of these issues as to how
I'll watch that video. I'll definitely watch that video, but there are some things that some caveats that, ARM might, get you a lot better power usage and stuff like that. But you have zero expandability. All right. Because unless they engineer a way that you can upgrade the RAM in the SoC, that's not happening. So you're not going to be able to add PCIe graphics. So you can't upgrade the graphics engines on them. That's
a system on a chip, though, Joel, right?
But correct, that's correct, and that's what all ARM chips are. They're all system on chips. So
it's true.
Any of the PC enthusiast market goes away with that.
That's one, but that's not the largest part of the market, and that's not where my big concern is. My bigger concern is a little more generic than that. But you're right. That absolutely does happen. You're absolutely right about that. Because you've turned it. What it does in effect is to take it. And the reason the PC enthusiast market goes away is because you take this thing and you've turned it from this sort of expansive computing device into an appliance. And that's exactly what you've done. So, you've gone from having a full stove and oven top to going to basically a toaster.
I was going to say, you microwave, a toaster, right?
Microwave. You can still cook everything in it. It's just, it's different as how it do it. And you can't make it bigger. You can't do anything else with it once it's there. You can't, so I get it. That's the kind of the difference it's a different approach. And I think ARM is great from an efficiency standpoint. It really, really is. And it's how we're going to, be able to take our computing more mobile than we did. It's a way to go with all that. But Chris, you and I have talked about this before. When you have the cell service in one of these ARM-based PCs, it's nice. You just take your PC anywhere. You don't even think about it. You're just on the network for the most part. You
turn it on. You turn it on. You're on the internet,
and you run it, and you're running. You don't have to wait. You don't have to rehook it to your phone. You don't have to pass it through anything and have that latency. By the way, that adds latency to things when you do that. By the way, but it's great. But if it's not fully baked, kids, and it's not going to be fully baked, I have concerns. So this guy explained some of that very well, and we kind of, I think it's worth a watch. It's a long watch. You got to have some patience. If you're part of one of the younger generations, you might not have the patience for the length of this video. I don't know. It's hard to say. It's not a 30-second TikTok, kids. But it is interesting, and it is a good watch. And the guy rambles a bit, but he does make a very good technical case for.
Well, it's never a 30-second TikTok, is it? I mean,
no, because then it becomes an Instagram. No.
This is what I'm saying.
So anyway, I thought it was kind of fascinating, but he had some concerns about support for this as they go forward and where they're going with it, and do they have their act together?
And that's a good question.
But to be fair, this guy has some other conversations about the current generation of Intel chips on a different video of his, where he's got some concerns about some bugs that are showing up in those things that are not well repaired. So guy's got a kind of a broad scope on his stuff. But it's I say it's technical. It's not technical so that you can't understand it technical. It's more he's giving you the facts about why. He doesn't just speculate on something. He says why he thinks that's the case. He gives you the examples. So I thought it was a pretty good presentation on it, worth paying attention to.
Well, that's good. So there's something to at least watch. If you want to get smarter about Windows on ARM or ARM-based chips or ARM-based systems, it's probably a good video to at least watch and get a basic understanding of what and where is going on with the platform. ARM is a it's come a long way since the 2011, 2012 versions of Windows RT or Windows 8. Not that Windows 8 ran on ARM, it did not, but same kind of interface. So it's come a long way since then.
Well, it did. It did run on ARM. It was on RT. It ran on
RT was, but
8 was Windows 8
and Windows 8 was. 8 was not.
8 was on it. Yeah, you could, but the point again, the thing is that what this guy's, again, his approach is, in this case, he's a little bit on the cautionary side. So, don't take it to be everything. There's a lot of good to be had there too. So, you just got to take it for what it is.
Agreed.
He's just, if you're a gamer, avoid it. It's not there for you.
ARM is not yet the platform for gaming.
And if you're
I would even say, if you're a Linux person as well, because unless you can find a Linux ROM for that device,
my understanding is they're actually working with some folks on that's
be able to boot off of a USB drive and do an install.
Yeah,
because I don't think that's happened yet. Yeah,
no, but I heard they're working on stuff like that. So
I mean, you can like, for example, like if it's like the way the Raspberry Pi is, you basically make the SD card off with another machine, and then you boot it. But it's not traditional, like take an ISO boot off of it. It's not at all like that. So I mean, it's
I will say, whereas as you mentioned, Joel, you can't expand the RAM on these things the way, again, because it's all SoC. You can't do that,
right?
But you can change out the SSD. They did make those on Microsoft's products anyway. At least on the Microsoft products, you can swap out the SSD for a bigger one.
Yeah, but that's hardware. That's hardware based and not necessarily OS platform.
All right, it's not platform based, right? So I want to make it clear that that's not 100%. It's not that there's no expandability at all in these things, but it's not.
It's limited.
Very little.
It's limited.
Very little.
It's very, very limited.
Highly limited.
But if you buy a Mac, you can't do it at all. So
there is that.
You go.
Right.
So, anyway, so I want to go ahead and I want to move us to the last story in our Windows segment, and this is. I saw this, and I'm usually not one to go and brag about or speak about some flavor of feature that might be coming in a Windows insider build, simply because there's so much that is happening with those things. They change so frequently, and then some of those features never see the light of day. All right. This one I thought was a little bit interesting in that I think this is it illustrates and demonstrates part of what is currently going wrong over at Microsoft right now. The Windows 11 start menu is potentially going to come up with an update where
I think this will happen. I really do.
You're probably right, but the problem that I have with this is that your computer does not need to mimic your phone. All right. It might be a good idea to have data that can go back and forth in between your phone platform of choice and your computer, but making your computer look like your phone is not where I think the technology needs to go. Specifically, if you've got an iPhone, despite what you've got on your home screen, if you scroll all the way over to the right, you're going to see an app library, or what they call the app library, and it basically groups all of your apps into category-based folders. All right. And one of the views that you will see, likely see, or potentially could likely see in the Windows Start menu, they generally have on the Start menu a list of shortcuts and a list of recently used, and you can swap those back and forth to have more than one or the other. So you could have more shortcuts than recent items, or more recent items than shortcuts. And you can group those in those shortcuts into folders, etc. And then the other view that you have is you click on a link called All Apps, and it shows you a list of applications alphabetically. And that's been the Start menu. What they are going to do now is allow you to look at the Start menu, the All Apps portion of the Start menu, in either an alphabetical list, that classic all alphabetical list, or in a app library sort of category-based grid. And you may find that valuable, you may not find that valuable. It's all going to depend on what you've got on your machine and how Windows decides to go ahead and group all of those things together, what it calls a developer tool versus a productivity tool or whatever. All right. And I don't know how much power you're going to have or ability you're going to have to modify any of that. They don't necessarily say.
I would argue actually there is, in Windows case anyway, a little bit of reason to have the operating system look like your phone. And I go back to Windows Phone. You don't have to go any further. Did that not, for the most part, wasn't that pretty cool? Didn't we all kind of like it? Or not?
It was
I did.
The Windows Phone tile interface was very, very good for Windows Phone. All right. It was very logical, and it functioned very, very well. And I don't know too many folks that actually used or had one of those devices that would naysay it. All right. That would disagree with that. They liked what they had, and a lot of folks were very upset with the fact that Microsoft killed the platform. What I am saying here, though, is since you don't have that anymore, and you don't necessarily have a category view on your Android phone, which Windows seems to be more empathetic with as opposed to iOS. All right. I don't know that I want my Windows Start menu to appear in a iPhone like app library sort of view. Now that's just me.
Maybe if it's optional.
Oh, it is optional. It is optional.
Oh, okay.
You can go back and forth in between an alphabetical list or this a grid or a category list. All right.
I think I would find usefulness and utility in this, but again, I don't use Windows as my primary OS. Maybe that's why I would kind of like this.
I don't know. But this right now is in build 22.635, which I believe is in the Canary channel. And you might be able to see it there, Dever Canary channels.
And for folks who aren't aware of it, the Canary channel is the really, 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 really early beta.
Yeah,
kind of
it's more of an alpha.
I would recommend stay away from it.
Yeah, so it's and the thing with the Canary channel, you've got to be careful with, because they do a lot of A/B testing in using the Canary channel. So just because somebody sees it doesn't mean you're ever going to see it in the real world.
That's what I mean. It may never with this
up.
Particular thing. You may or may not see this. You may or may not see this. So I don't know how that's going to work out, or if it's going to work out, or what. But we'll see. I thought it was interesting enough to at least mention. So we'll see. But I want to go ahead now and move us to our tip of the week segment. And I want to remind everybody, hey, iTechGear.org was founded with the intent of making technology easy for everyone to use and understand. And we've dedicated most of our writing careers to that specific purpose. So every week we're going to have featured on the podcast in the iTechGear Weekly, a new computing tip authored by one of our experienced editors. And if you have questions, requests, suggestions, or would just want to go ahead and drop us a line, you can go ahead and send all of that stuff to tips@itechgear.org. You know, there's a lot of folks out there that use Excel. Can I have a show of hands, please? Who uses Excel on a daily basis? Yeah, that's what I thought. All right. So that's all of us. And some of us like it and some of us don't like it. Some of us, especially in the healthcare industry, there can be tens of thousands of rows of data. It can be unwieldy, especially you start scrolling down the list and you lose track of actually what column is what. And if you aren't doing this, you really might want to go ahead and check it out. You can actually freeze different, it's called the freeze pane function, where you can have a row or a set of rows and columns actually be static, and then as you're scrolling through data, that the data scrolls, but those things that you've asked to be stationary remain stationary, so you can see the appropriate columns on the at the top of your sheet, or maybe even some very important rows on the left side. In order to go ahead and do this, you just go ahead and select the letter next to or above the row that you want to freeze. All right. And then select view freeze panes or view freeze the top row. All right. And at the very, very least, that's going to allow all of those, for freeze top row is going to allow all those columns, column headers to remain in the view as you scroll through data. It can be a huge boon. Because I can't tell you how many working sessions I've had to stop with folks and say, do me a favor, freeze the top row. All right. So that we can see what column is what as we go through, over to column D, DJ. All right. As opposed to column D or J, column D, J, where you've gone through the alphabet 3 or 4 times in terms of columns and now rows. So it's a huge, huge boon. Freeze your panes, and you will be able to keep track of all of the data on your spreadsheet without forgetting what those important columns and rows are. So there you go. I want to go ahead then and move us to our pick of the week segment. And I want to, before we do that though, I want to remind everybody that, our picks are typically software, hardware, and other items of interest that we have individually purchased and actually use, and that we like enough that we want to recommend them to you, our growing listener base. These aren't paid advertisements or items that we have any kind of affiliated marketing relationship with. Shut up. And these, if they were, the editorial policy over at iTechGear.org would indicate that we have to let you guys know about that up front. These are sincerely things that we believe in, and we want to bring them to you at the end of each show. Why?
Because we like you.
There you go. And this week, Larry, you've got the pick. So what did you find?
It does.
I do. I have a good one. I'll tell you. When the thinking back when the iPad Pro, the most recent version released a little while back, I pulled the trigger maybe a little too quickly. I wanted one kind of bad. So I ended up with one of apparently just a few hundred that may have had a minor display issue. It wasn't a big deal. I might have could have lived with it, but I'm a Taurus, so I couldn't live with it. But it was a flaw that was supported by at least a few hundred comments on Reddit and other places. So anyway, bottom line was, before the 14 days was up, I returned it, and I'm about ready to pull the trigger and go get it again. But I think, since we're not hearing about this anymore at all, I think if it was a real issue, Apple's resolved it. And that's the way Apple does sometimes with smaller issues that aren't
Mhm.
across thousands and thousands of
They'll take
devices.
care of it
They
without
just
telling
fix it.
anybody. Yeah.
So something I've always struggled with when using an iPad or any kind of a tablet is holding it. I don't care how lightweight even this new iPad is, and it is lightweight. It is still a large, sort of bulky device. It's
Mhm.
not easy to hold up at viewing angle without some sort of assistance. Either you get the keyboard that comes with it, and I didn't really want that because it wasn't the way I wanted to use this iPad.
Right.
So I've tried in the past several similar padded tablet stands. Never found one I liked until this one. This is as you'll see in the show notes, it's a padded lap stand, if you will. And I think it's the perfect size. It can be turned around, flipped 180 degrees for a completely different viewing angle and use case. So one might work on sofa, one might work better propped back in a recliner halfway back. It weighs literally nothing. It's like a pillow, but it's a firm sort of pillow. Sits flat on your lap. It's very, very solid. Has a holder on each side for the Apple Pen. And overall, I think it's probably the perfect iPad viewing companion. I typically use an iPad maybe differently than, say, Chris G, who uses it for work a lot. If I'm going to watch YouTube for the next 45 minutes and watch videos of puppies or whatever, I want to sit there and hold my iPad. I don't want to hold it with both hands though. So this is a perfect little thing. 21 bucks, and it is well made. I promise you this is worth more in quality than $21. The link's in our show note. Give it a try. You might like it.
It'll work with either size iPad or even other tablet
The way it's
devices.
made, it's
It has little
open-ended.
pockets. It has all kinds of little things going on
Yeah, but
there.
the way it's made, it's got like each side has different slots at the bottom. So you
Yeah.
can have it sort of straight up or pull it out toward the last slot and have it almost flat. And then you get the same effect on the other side. So you get like 7 or 8 viewing angles. It's honestly well thought out. Probably the nicest stand I've ever seen for an iPad.
Nice. Excellent. Excellent.
Go for it.
Well, that, kids, is the show. This has been the iTechGear Weekly, episode number 98. The hot sign is clearly important. Recorded live Sunday, July 14th, 2024, live from iTechGear Central for Dr. Mr. Larry McJunkin, Brother Joe McLaughlin, and Mr. Chris Gavula. This is Christopher Spera saying we will see you next time.